Welcome to Coconut Oil, Stardust, and Dope Vibes. I am your resident fairy godmother, Tamara Angela, and just some thoughts this morning. Said this year I'm going to try to do better with recording some, giving you guys the audio when these downloads come so you guys can stay as updated as possible. So, was having a recent conversation, and typically I tend to when these things come up more than once, then I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and have the conversation. Excuse me, because this is obviously something that needs to be shared or discussed. So I had done a post a while ago that, and I think this was really during the pandemic when I was talking about this and saying how important it is to understand your own gifts, accept your own gifts, and walk in those gifts. Because it is your contribution to the universe, this world, this earth. It's your contribution. We need you to step out and do the thing that you do because it adds to this world and just how things operate in general. And so we are really at this space where we need people to operate fully in their gifts. Reason being is because there are a lot of, and I talked about this a while ago too, I'm just kind of almost wrapping up, bringing you guys to the space where the things that I discussed were coming. We are here. We're here in that moment. So one of the spaces is having the understanding that, you got to walk in your gifts because those gifts are divinely ordained and divinely given to you. And you're being asked to operate in that space. So it is, a blessing to you, but it's also a blessing to others. And then there's this understanding that all these illusions are falling away. It was really easy during the Neptune and Pisces era. It's very easy for us to fall for illusions, fall for things to look a certain way. We accepted that things were the way that they were. And with enlightenment, there is this understanding being gained that it's hey, let's look into that a little bit. See if that even still fits for who we are designed to be as mankind. Do these things that I'm being offered, these things that I'm doing, do they even fit in the scope of what I'm supposed to be doing and where I'm supposed to be? And so what we really have come to is this space where things are being highly unmasked, and you can say unmasked, unveiled, revealed. There's really this place where it's oh, all this time I've been looking at it like this, and it's really this. Or all this time I've been looking, you may have been looking at a certain situation, and that situation may have worked for you based on where we were, but it doesn't work anymore. I grew up in the 80s. I was a child of the 80s. And I hear people say all the time, well, we used to do blah, 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 blah. We did. And we survived. And we were fine. But the reality is, life ain't like that anymore. So we can't, like, things have changed so highly. Like, we can't equate things and correlate them to the way that they used to be, because stuff just doesn't work that way anymore. We don't even live in that world anymore for us to even use those skills or allow those certain things to happen. Things have changed. And so with understanding that we have this amount of change that has occurred, we really have to put ourselves in a space where we're understanding that the changes occurred and we're rolling with it. Like, we're flowing with the amount of change that has happened and saying, this is where we're going to be now. This is how we have to operate. And so we've kind of come through this space where it's not necessarily, I don't want to call it a recession. I want to say more like we are encountering this dip that has to happen because the way that we look at money has changed. The way that we use money has changed. The way like currency and what we share and trade has changed. And so we're not operating on any of that kind of stuff in the same way anymore. We're not using any of that the same way anymore. And so then we have to also come to grips with the fact that, I use this as an example all the time as well. There are certain people who are meant to, what we call it now is influencing. 20 years ago, there was no such job as being an influencer. Like, that just didn't exist. And it didn't exist because social media and the internet and the way that we know it, that didn't exist. And so we couldn't encourage people to do that job because there was no space for it. But people who have influencer energy existed. They may have been models. They may have done advertising, marketing. They may have been a walking commercial in some other sort of way. But then when social media came along, it's like, oh, that plugs into being an that plugs into being an influencer. And so there are a lot of people who are struggling right now because the thing that they need to do, their contribution to the universe, the road hasn't been paved yet. They are on the low, exhibiting a lot of their gifts, They're giving it out piece by piece, but on a higher note, the thing that they're supposed to be doing doesn't exist. And so it feels away. They feel away. They're just like, oh, well, why isn't this working? Or why doesn't this come together? Or, they're like in this funk. And the answer is you're supposed to be paving your own way, not looking for somebody else to plug in everything for you and say, oh, this is what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be paving your own way where this is concerned. How do you do that? You get up every day and you answer what your soul is leading you to do, because intuitively you're constantly being led to exhibit that gift. You just feel out of place because there's like no tangible space to land, right? It's like you know what you know what your soul is asking you to do, but you're like, how do I label this, or where does this go? Part of it is you're not supposed to necessarily label it, maybe not just yet. And the other part is it's like it's ahead of its time. So you let it manifest how it manifests, and then you go ahead and you put it out there when the time is right. That gets difficult for people because there's always this need to fit in and conform. And people need to understand what you're doing in order for them to patronize it or to pay you for it. And there's going to be some time where you're going to be exhibiting these gifts and people don't know what you are. They don't understand. Your job is not to necessarily make them feel comfortable with it. Your job is to do what you are divinely led to do and let them catch up. Because they will at some point. And even if they don't, you're still supposed to do what you're supposed to do. I say that as well because a lot of people are struggling with the economy and trying to fit in or just trying to find jobs and, make career moves based on what's out there. That's going to be a hard road. Because you're always going to figure out you don't fit. It's never going to make enough money. Because you have a bigger destiny at hand, but then you also got bills to pay. You also have rent. You also have overhead. You got lights. You got all this stuff that you have to do. So we understand, we acknowledge, we respect that all of that is an issue. When it comes to operating divinely, all of that stuff is an issue. But how do we move through that? You got to at least be willing to take the baby steps. And, excuse me, you got to at least be willing to take the baby steps and follow. Like when that light comes on in your soul, that kind of lights up and makes you say, oh my gosh, like this thing is really pushing me. Go towards that. Lean in a little bit more. Lean in. See where that's guiding you. See where that's taking you. Answer that call. It's super important. Answer that call. The way all of this culminates and comes together for a sense of community and things of that nature, like our well-being as humans, it depends on a lot of us answering that call. And that's going to feel difficult right now. It's going to feel very difficult right now because people are like, but this light bill got to get paid. and that's a existential situation. So what do we do? Because I'm throwing these things out there. It's like, what do we do? You have to find those small ways to let your soul answer. Because it's like your soul has this radar, and when the universe needs you to jump into action, it's like boop, boop, boop. And your soul encounters the radar, but then just doesn't know exactly what to do. Your soul doesn't know what to do. You've got to answer the calling. You've got to answer the calling. Got to answer the calling. I know it's going to feel crazy and it's going to feel like a sacrifice, but this is what faith is about, and this is what obedience is about, is answering those callings, and asking God to help you through. It's like, God, I don't feel, I hear this calling, I feel it, but I don't feel so sure about it. I have faith in you, but my footing feels unstable. Help guide me. Show me. Give me clarity. Because I want to walk through this. And I want to make it through. And I want to do exactly what you're guiding me to do. Build that relationship to really be able to help you make it through the way that you need to make it through. It's important. And we have to, at some point, come to the understanding that everything that we do is built on community. It's not always about us, but we're always putting ourselves first. Like, oh, I got to take care of this. I got to take care of that. 9 times out of 10, when you take care of what you're being asked to, as far as your divine assignment, the rest of it, it evens itself out. This message is for somebody today. I don't know who it's for. If it was for you, just touch and agree. Hands over your heart. And just say a prayer of gratitude for being brought to this place where you heard this message and received this message. If you heard the message and you're like, I know this is for me, but I need this to settle, go back and press replay and start all over again and listen to it until it resonates and it feels like breathing, like it's automatic, where you can accept it. Work on building your relationship with your divine spirit team. That way you start to trust when you receive the messages. And just note that just because you trust, it doesn't mean that you always are like, yes, I'm walking blindly. But sometimes we're like, all right, I hear y'all. I'm going to go ahead and walk in this, but I'm still scared. I still have apprehension, but I trust you enough to know that I can override my apprehension and my fear with that trust. Thanks for joining me today on Coconut Oil, Stardust, and Dope Vibes. I am your resident fairy godmother, Tamara Angela. Please share the message. Talk about it with your friends and your tribe. Bring your friends and your tribe over here to the podcast. Share the knowledge. That's what it's here for.